Good morning and welcome back to another fatty video. I decided I want to make soap with lard, and while I was chopping up the fat I decided let's do a video between wet rendering and dry rendering, because I've never done them side by side and really measured the differences between the two methods. So this is your lucky day today. Okay, so what I've done is I took my fat, I chopped it in small little blocks, and then I decided to mince it. Now, there's no right or wrong way here. Whatever works for you is the right way for you. I prefer to mince it because it just renders faster. There are other people that says, you know what, all the effort that you need to put in to clean the stuff afterwards is way too much work. They just rather render it a little bit longer. So that is your choice. But if you want, and if you maybe don't have something to mince it with, chop it as small as possible, because it does go a little bit faster. And for me, you need a little bit less heat. That definitely makes a difference. So I split my minced lard into two heaps. Now, the reason why I took lard is I usually work with tallow. It's just much cheaper here in South Africa. It's much easier obtainable. So lard is not as cheap. It's about, this was 44 rand per kilogram for the South Africans. Tallow, I get round about between 10 rand and 15 rand. So this is between 3 to 4 times more expensive than tallow. Beef fat, just much cheaper. So I started with 302 grams in each pot. The one pot I did the dry render. So I started on the gas, very low and slow. And in the other pot, I added the other half of the lard, and I added about 300 milliliters of water as well. No salt, no nothing, just plain clean water. So I just decided I'm going to render it that way and see where we're going to go. Okay, for the dry rendering, what I ended up with was 202 grams of oil and 58 grams of crackling. So with the wet rendering, I ended up with 143 grams of oil and 118.5 grams of jello crackling, because it's not really crackling. So off the bat, if you dry render, you're going to render more oil out of your fat faster. The wet rendering is a little bit more tedious because you need to cook off the water as well afterwards, because you don't want any moisture in your fat, because it's going to just speed up the rancidity, and it also can grow mold. So if you do a wet render, doesn't matter if it's lard or tallow, I prefer to keep it in the fridge, because at room temperature, if there's any moisture left, you're going to have some mold growing in there, and we don't like the mold. Okay, so what I've done then is I took the crackling that was left over from the dry rendering, and also the jello crackling, because it's not really crackling, from the wet render, and I put it back to the pot and I dry rendered that, and I got another 57 grams of oil out of that batch. So the first one is dry render, low and slow. The second one was wet render, quite fast, because it can only heat up until boiling point of water. So you can't really overcook it while there is water in there. And then the two together, the crackling together, I dry rendered a little bit warmer. So it was definitely a darker crackling that came out of that. And yeah, I've gained another 57 grams of oil there. So the color of the end products, all of them were basically the same golden color. When it started to cool down, it's the same white color there. So the main difference was the speed, the gain, and then the very important one, the one on the smellometer, whatever you can smell out of it. So I've got my dry render here. There is my wet render. So you can see there's definitely a difference there. And then this was the little bit that was left over, the crackling that I rendered again. So on the smellometer, the dry rendered one, it's maybe a 2. It's definitely going to smell of something. That's something I want to make clear from the beginning. If you buy olive oil, it smells like olive. If you buy macadamia nut oil, there's a nutty fragrance to it. Every oil and fat is supposed to smell like something. There's vitamins and all kinds of other things in here as well. So it's not going to be fragrance free. If you want to get your stuff fragrance free, you're just going to frustrate yourself. And I think by the time, if you wet render the 6th time, sorry Nia, nobody's got that much time. We don't render fat 6 times, but by then I think all the goodness were cooked out of it in any way. So but it's supposed to smell like something. Now I would say bacony, but also not really. This is about a 2 if it gets to a 2. If you make soap with this, you're not going to smell it at all. If you want to make skin products with it, I don't know if you're going to smell it. If you add a little bit essential oil to it, I don't think you're going to smell it at all. It's very fine, but I did go on a very low heat here. Then the next one was my wet rendering. I don't think even a 1, maybe a 1. It's very faint. It does smell like something. It's not fragrance free, but this will work excellently for skin products. So if you want to make skin products, maybe you can go for a wet render, but then you must make sure that you include a preservative if you don't worry about the moisture in there, or you must make 100% sure you don't have any moisture in it. Your germs and yeasts and all the woolly stuff grows on water. So if you've got an anhydrous product that does not contain water, you don't need a broad spectrum preservative. But if there's water in there, remember to preserve it as well. Then the last one was the one that I added the crackling and the jello crackling to the pot, and I re-rendered that a little bit faster, a little bit warmer, just for the interest of it, and it's definitely much more bacony. This I will still make soap with it, but I will not use it for skin products. I think the smell might come through there. It's going to be awesome to fry eggs in, so you can use that for that as well. So that is basically the whole ins and outs of it. Dry rendering, definitely faster, you get more oil out of it. Wet rendering, a little bit slower. Extra step, you need to make sure that you don't have any water left in it. If you do wet rendering, I would suggest store it in the fridge just to make sure, because if there's any moisture left, there are going to be mold growing in it eventually. But yeah, and then if you go very hot and fast, then definitely you're going to import some bacony smell in there. And think about it like a barbecue. If you take meat out of the fridge, it doesn't smell like much. But the moment when you put it in the barbecue, or in South Africa, as ons braai, then the neighbors are starting to drool. So it's a moment when you caramelize the meaty bits and the blood that the smell develops. So if you go low and slow and you don't crisp things up, you are not caramelizing the sinew and the little bit of blood and stuff that's in there, then you're not going to get much of a smell in your fat as well. If you go warm and fast, then you're definitely going to caramelize it and it's going to smell like bacon. Definitely. So the reason why I like to wet render my tallow, I usually do tallow, is by the time that most people do dry render first. I think because you get more oil out of it. I prefer to do a wet render first, because by the time that I've done my first wet render, the little bit of blood and stuff ended up in the water. So I can use clean water. I can cool it down, rinse it off, add new water to it, and then if I want to dry render, then I will dry render afterwards. But then there's not much of blood and stuff left that's going to impart some fragrance, or not increase, amplify the fragrance. I don't even know what's the right word in English for that. It's going to go up on the smellometer. But anyhow, so that is all the ins and outs. I will do a tallow one as well. I don't have any raw beef fat at the moment. So as soon as I get my hands on some, then I will do the same thing there and see if we're going to get about the same results, and yeah, and the smell and so on. And then I'm going to do tallow versus lard soap as well. I'm going to use the same recipe. I'm going to use the same amount of tallow and the same amount of lard in both of them. And then after 6-week year, I will come back to you and say, what is the differences between tallow and lard and soap? Because I don't know. I've never done the two of them next to one another. I've made plenty of tallow soaps. But lard, no, not as much, but so I will share that with you. So thank you for joining me, and thank you for your time. Please like and subscribe if this content resonates with you and if you find it interesting. And then I will see you guys again in the next video.